Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com. It is a Thursday edition of the show. We're on the back end of the second joint training camp practice between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Jacksonville Jaguars. It was another action-packed practice that saw some splash plays by both teams, really, in particular, Trevor Lawrence launching the ball down the field. A couple of miscues by the Bucs as well, but they did have some good things that we will talk about too. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is the face that runs the place at pewterreport.com, SR, Scott Reynolds. And Scott, before we talk about the Buccaneers and the Jaguars, we from pewterreport.com want to say thank you to all the Pewter people, because we now have 15,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel.
Yeah, super excited about this. We do the show for you. You guys have responded in so many ways, helping us get to 15,000 subscribers by liking our videos, commenting on them. We love reading the comments. It's so much fun to interact with you guys in the comment section after the show. From your channel memberships that are starting to pour in. Yeah. We just greatly appreciate your support for our Pewter Report TV YouTube channel. And as you've seen, we're cranking out even more content, live practice footage, Pewter Pulse videos. We've got the Bucs Vault from Liam Mitchell, where he's cranking out content today. We're 24 days away from the start of the season. How do I know that? Because it's Cadillac Williams Day. He's got the highlights from Cadillac Williams here on Pewter Report TV. So again, thank you so much. Over 15,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel. So now we've gone from Mike Evans with 13, Chris Godwin 14, Jalen McMillan with 15. We're on to Keenan Isaac.
We are on to Keenan Isaac. That'll be the big one. And Keenan Isaac is very boom or bust. Yeah. We want to hit the boom part of Keenan Isaac so we can kind of keep this train rolling. But thank you to all the Pewter people. It really means a lot. I love it when you guys enjoy an episode that we do, or Pewter Pulse that Scott does, or all the various videos that we do. So cannot thank you guys enough. And this is why we do the show, for you people. And we also do it because we love talking about Buccaneers football. So let's talk about the Bucs and the joint training camp practice. I think overall, Scott, yesterday we talked a lot about the Bucs came out flat. Antoine Winfield Jr. said that himself. Incrementally, I think the Bucs played better today, but not exactly where they wanted to be. Let's start with the defense and some of the things that we kind of noticed on that side of the ball.
Well, I tell you, it's hard not to notice Vita Vea. I asked Doug Peterson in today's press conference about Vita Vea and about Todd Bowles and Levante David. Levante. And this guy is a massive man. Peterson acknowledged that. He gave them fits in terms of the one-on-one pass rush, but he's also been dominant, surprise, surprise, in the run game. Yeah. And we saw Tampa Bay's run game start the preseason in a fantastic way in Cincinnati, Matt. 36 carries for 13 yards. I'm sorry, 36 yards on 13 carries.
Yes.
And we've kind of seen that dominance in run defense continue this week in Jacksonville. And with the exception of a couple of runs here and there that have bounced to the outside, we've seen Tampa Bay's speed. We've seen their gap integrity. We've seen them fly to the ball. Run defense is not going to be a problem.
Correct.
And that's fine, because Todd Bowles does not want teams to be two-dimensional. Now, the secondary, the pass coverage still needs some work. It was better today than it was yesterday when the Bucs got shredded in 7-on-7s and 11-on-11s until the end of practice. But the run defense through these first 2 days here in Jacksonville has been really solid. And I'm looking for that to continue Saturday night.
And typically when there's success in stopping the run for the Bucs defense, it begins with Vita Vea. And let's remember, Kalijah Kancey hasn't practiced in a couple of days. So Vita Vea, it's certainly not a one-man band. He's getting help from Levante David and KJ Britt at linebacker, and some of the other defensive tackles that have been in the mix. But Vita Vea is, I'm not going to call him the eighth wonder of the world, but he is like his own presence. And Doug Peterson, he spoke this morning. The Jaguars do their media availability a little bit different than the way the Bucs do, and I kind of like seeing the differences and everything. And Peterson spoke today, and he got asked a question about, he did speak a lot about the Bucs, but one of them, he was asked a question about his own offensive line. And clearly, Vita Vea had an impact on Doug Peterson, because he went on to talk about his own line and then kind of pivoted to that offensive line of the Jaguars going up against Vita Vea and the Bucs defensive line. He went to describe Vita Vea as a big, strong, powerful human being. And you know what, Coach Peterson? I agree. That is exactly what Vita Vea is. And yesterday's practice, the Bucs certainly did not get gouged in the run game, but there were a couple of slip-ups here and there where, because the Bucs are so good at stopping the run. Shout out to TB Fan 19 with this comment. Vita Vea's jersey is hanging on by hopes and dreams. Hey, he got slender this offseason. But when you see the brief slip-ups that the Bucs had yesterday, because we hold their run-stopping game in such high regard, it was good to see them get back on track in that area.
Yeah, and I will say, too, Brian Thomas continues to go off. It looks like the Jacksonville Jaguars have a gem.
Yeah.
And their first round pick, the wide receiver, got deep again today. Not with as much frequency as he did yesterday. I think Tampa Bay was kind of keyed in on him. He did beat Tyke Smith, who has really been phenomenal in training camp on a sluggo seam route. That's where line up in the slot against Tyke Smith. You fake the slant, and then you go. If you're old enough to remember Super Bowl 37 in 2002, the sluggo seam route was a staple in the Raiders offense that John Gruden kind of tipped off to Monty Kiffin and the boys. Dexter Jackson had 2 interceptions in the first half on sluggo seam routes, as John Lynch told him he would. And so it worked today, though, against the Buccaneers. Kayvon Merriweather did not have the speed to keep up with Brian Thomas. Certainly Tyke Smith did, and once he got in the hip pocket, it was over. And even Evan Ingram, that was another deep threat. The tight end for the Jacksonville Jaguars got beat. I should say Levante David got beat on one play. There was a Tampa 2. It was a very seldom used coverage by the Buccaneers to go cover 2, but it was the right call, the right read against cover 2. And Levante David was that Mike in the middle that was trailing, and Evan Ingram just split both safeties, took it to the house. The other play, we saw the Jaguars use a lot of play action. Their passing game is going to be based off of play action. And for the most part, it did fool the Buccaneers quite a bit. Now, there were opportunities. The Buccaneers got some sacks yesterday, not as frequently today. I think the offensive line for Jacksonville did a much better job in the 11-on-11 period. But we did see Evan Ingram beat Antoine Winfield Jr. So even the All-Pro got sucked in on the play action fake by Trevor Lawrence, and Evan Ingram hit him with a deep 30 to 35-yard reception.
Before I kind of go further about Thomas and Ingram, I just want to say, fear not, Bucs fans. Don't freak out just yet because, and you could see it on the highlight video. I'm calling it Live Look. It's on Pewter Report TV, our YouTube channel. You can check it out. If you didn't check it out already, it's been out for a little bit now. You can check it after this podcast ends. It's right on our YouTube channel. But some of the big plays, like the one where Evan Ingram beat Levante David, and the one specifically where Brian Thomas was deep down the field, those were both on 7-on-7. So take that with a grain of salt. Don't freak out just yet because there was no pass rush. Who knows on any particular play what would have necessarily happened if there was that pass rush, or if Todd Bowles was sending an overall blitz. With all of that said, Brian Thomas seems like the real deal. And there seems to be a common trend where, if the Bucs do get beat badly by a team, it's usually by one player in particular. I mean, I go back to that 2020 season. Yes, the Bucs got the ultimate revenge and won the Super Bowl, and it was fantastic. But remember that regular season game against the Chiefs. Tyreek Hill was kind of a one-man band, just destroying the Bucs left and right. The Bucs did a great job last season where they, like week 1 against the Vikings, Justin Jefferson had a really good game. I think he had like 10 receptions and went off for like over 100 yards. But a lot of that was in the first half.
Correct.
Todd Bowles makes adjustments. I think he only had like 2 receptions in the second half of that game. And we all know what happened for the Bucs to begin the season and really kind of started to, you want to start off on the right foot. It really helped the Bucs catapult as the season went on. I'm not saying Brian Thomas is necessarily a Buck killer just yet, but hey, if you're playing fantasy football, keep an eye on him. Evan Ingram got a ton of targets too. Red zone, another situation where no pass rush, can't necessarily say, if Ingram would have scored on a specific play, but Trevor Lawrence looks at him a lot. And the Bucs, there's been some questions about linebackers. What can they do in coverage, especially with Servassier Dennis out? And Ingram, I think, took advantage a little bit of that today.
Yeah, I agree. And again, not to become Jaguars report,
Yes.
but Trevor Lawrence now with Christian Kirk out, he really has a rapport with Brian Thomas.
Yeah.
I mean, he finds him early and often in practice, and Evan Ingram as well. So for the fantasy football people out there, keep an eye on those three, because the rapport that he has with Ingram and Thomas is pretty insane. And the Falcons are making some insane moves, Matt.
Yes, they are.
Matthew Judon was traded for by the Falcons, giving up a third-round pick. And we'll see if he ends up signing a new deal with them or not. I would think that would have to be the case, because otherwise you're renting a player for a year. And the Falcons did clear out some cap room today by restructuring the contract of Chris Lindstrom, their guard. So it looks like that move is coming. The thing with Matthew Judon is he suffered a lower bicep injury after the fourth game of the season last year, and did have a couple sacks. I want to say he had 3 or 4 sacks in the first start of the season. He's 31. He'll be 32 later this year. And at some point in time, pass rushers fall off. The Bucs saw that firsthand with a couple of guys that they had. They traded for Jason Pierre-Paul in 2018. And eventually Jason Pierre-Paul started to slide, and the Bucs let him go. And same thing with Shaq Barrett, right? They brought him on board in 2019 as a unheralded free agent, and all of a sudden he blew up and had 19 and a half sacks and had a couple of good years. The Buccaneers probably, in hindsight, should have kept franchising him, because they had to cut him and take a dead cap hit. He's just not the player that he once was. They ended up cutting him, signed with the Dolphins, and then since has retired. So, and he's what, 31 years old?
Yes.
So at some point,
I think he'll be 32
in time,
soon.
Yeah. In your early 30s, pass rushers fall off. And Judon is not a speed guy by any means. He's a power guy. So we'll see if this move is something that really hurts the Buccaneers. I will say that Tampa Bay does have some really good offensive tackles, right?
Yeah, and thank you to Bucks Basement for the $1.99 super chat talking about Matthew Judon. And that was kind of the first thing I thought of. Well, first, you're like, shoot, a team in the NFC South that isn't the Buccaneers is, getting a pretty good pass rusher when he's fully healthy and playing his best. But then my next thought was, well, that's why the Bucs just paid Tristan Wirfs a lot of money on a contract extension, and that's why they moved Luke Gedeke out to right tackle, and we all saw what he did last season. Obviously, when you get a player like Judon, you immediately think, okay, he's probably going to match up against Luke Gedeke. I think this is a better matchup for Gedeke for everything that you just mentioned, Scott. That Gedeke, he was known as the glass eater coming out of Central Michigan. He's better against physical, hard-nosed guys, because that's what he is as an offensive lineman. Gedeke, I think, tends to struggle a little bit more with the speed rushers, which is the case with Matthew Judon, especially that he's getting older in age. So, yes, it's something you obviously have to pay attention to, maybe be a little bit concerned about, because edge rusher was kind of the big thing on the Falcons defense that they haven't figured out just yet. And you can kind of give the nod to the Buccaneers in that aspect of the game. So they clearly shored that up. But I also want to say, because obviously they just made a big signing right before the show as well, signing safety Justin Simmons to a 1-year, $8 million deal. He played for the Broncos for quite a while. So the Falcons are gearing up. They understand that this is their window right now, and they're trying to do everything that they possibly can. All I will say, though, is just because a team wins the offseason with big, splashy free agent signings, I know the one with Simmons came today, doesn't automatically give them the keys to drive the car of being the winner of the division. It doesn't make them the champions of the division. You can look at a lot of teams. Look at the Saints last year with all the signings with Derek Carr, and they didn't work out. Look at, if you want to go back to Baker Mayfield in his days with the Cleveland Browns, when they got Odell Beckham Jr. and you had Jarvis Landry, it was like, wow, who's going to stop the Browns? And that never truly worked out. So let's not say the season is over just yet, that the Bucs have no chance to win the division, all because of a couple of signings that Atlanta made.
Yeah, exactly. And to your point, Matt, I'm going to say that have the Falcons gotten better? Yeah, I think they've gotten better. But I also think the Buccaneers have gotten better this offseason, mainly through the draft, and mainly because you have another year of Baker Evans. Let's just call it Baker Evans.
Hey, they really were like that. They were one symbiotic today.
Exactly. Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans both returning, right? So, That makes the Buccaneers better because they're in year 2 of their chemistry.
Exactly.
So if we saw what happened last year in year 1, it's only going to get better this year for those 2 players because they've got that chemistry, that rapport together. And then you add in pieces like Chase McLaughlin, Levante David back, Antoine Winfield Jr., Tristan Wirfs. So I think the Buccaneers have gotten better by staying together. And then also a situation where you've got, the draft class coming in. So I think to me that speaks volumes about what Tampa Bay has been able to do. They're not going to have to necessarily get better by adding free agents.
Yeah.
They're going to get better by adding younger players and then keeping this talented nucleus together.
Great teams build through the draft.
Yes.
And then they try to re-sign as many of those guys as they possibly can.
Yeah.
Tristan Wirfs, Antoine Winfield Jr. Hey, Mike Evans built through the draft. They
Right.
got him through the draft. Obviously, it was a very long time ago, over a decade ago, but still good enough. And thank you to Jonas Correa for this $1.99 super chat, who says, Atlanta going all in, actually all in, not cowboy all in.
Yeah.
I don't know what the heck the Cowboys are doing. I mean, you got Micah Parsons, CeeDee Lamb, and
Yeah.
Dak Prescott. I understand it's a very difficult decision to make, but
Sure.
they're not even paying any of them, which
I know.
makes no sense to me.
Exactly. He's 0813, one of our Pewter Report TV channel members,
Yes.
with a great comment. Never forget the 2011 Eagles dream team. So it's hard to buy Super Bowl teams. It's hard to have teams that you purchase and you buy all these free agents. It happens sometimes when you've got teams like the 2002 Buccaneers, where John Gruden and Rich McKay did import a lot of new talent on the offensive side of the ball, but they had such a core nucleus of Mike Allstott, Warren Sapp, Derek Brooks, John Lynch, Rondé Barber, Brian Kelly, Dexter Jackson. You had so many players that they just needed to add a couple of other pieces to. And in Atlanta, they do have a pretty good nucleus, especially at the skill positions, right? You got Drake London, who's a talented receiver. Kyle Pitts, I think, is still maybe not at the level most thought he would be at, but he's talented. Maybe that this new regime can get them more out of him. And the 2 running backs, I think, what a 1-2 punch in Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. So, and along the offensive line, Chris Lindstrom's a heck of a piece. One of the best guards in the league.
These new signings for the Falcons, I think, has elevated them to a point where if they don't make the postseason, like maybe they don't win the division and the Bucs do, or something crazy happens. If they don't make the postseason at all, that is a huge disappointment for the Atlanta Falcons. So they're going all in. You know what? Good for them. Sometimes you got to do that. I also do want to say, because I think some people may end up making a comparison to the 2020 Bucs team, like how all you did was buy players. Not necessarily. The Bucs had an attractive team from a skill set standpoint from the Buccaneers,
and an offensive line standpoint.
Yes, and an offensive line standpoint. And that brought Tom Brady in.
Right.
You obviously all had skill players, but then Antonio Brown, Rob Gronkowski, Leonard Fournette, they were all extra complements to an already good team. Did they help elevate the team? Absolutely. Who knows where the Bucs would have been without Leonard Fournette in the postseason? I've had Leonard Fournette on the mind because we're in Jacksonville, and obviously Leonard played a lot for the Jacksonville and then was on the Buccaneers. But it's a little bit different if anyone was thinking about making that comparison.
Exactly. Folks, we're excited to welcome back another great advertising partner to our team here for some season-long coverage, and that is the folks over at Walk-Ons. And folks, I'm letting you know right now, it's 4:19 Eastern time if you're watching this show live on Pewter Report TV, and it's happy hour already. So make sure you get to Walk-Ons for happy hour, Wednesdays and Thursdays, 3 p.m. to 6 p.m., and then 9 p.m. to close. Tuesdays, all-day happy hour. You can also enjoy happy hour on Mondays and Fridays from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. on Friday and 3 p.m. to close on Monday. Great drink specials. $3 happy hour pours, $3.99 domestic pints. If you're looking for a beer, that's a hell of a price, especially in today's economy. $4 house wine. You can get some fantastic food items as well. I recommend the cheeseburger sliders for $8. That'll fill you up. And the $7 Boom Boom Shrimp. So a lot of great food and drink specials at Walk-Ons. 3 locations in the Tampa Bay area. It's also a great place to do your fantasy football draft. They've got plenty of room for your fantasy football draft. The location in Lutz has its own little private room where you can handle that. It's right by the Walk-Ons, or I should say the Wesley Chapel outlet malls, right? So that's a great place to do your draft. Midtown Tampa, also Lakeland. And if you don't want to do your draft at walk-ons, well, get catering to go and let walk-ons feed your fantasy football draft crew. You can do that at your house with some cheeseburger sliders, some chicken tenders, or some chicken wings. So it's a great place to either do your draft or get the catering for your fantasy football draft party at walk-ons locations in Lutz, Midtown Tampa, and Lakeland. For more information, visit walkons.com.
I don't live too far from the Midtown walk-on.
That's a great place to watch
so
sports.
it's a great spot to watch sports, hang out, have a good time, and definitely take advantage of what they have to offer, especially with the fantasy football season coming upon us with football season so close. Scott, there were a couple of injuries that we got to talk about today. One that was very surprising, wasn't expecting it, and then bam, we just saw it right then and there. Tyreek Thunderberg, the undrafted free agent cornerback that really done some great things in training camp so far. He was in a walking boot on his left foot. That's something to keep note of. And then yesterday we talked about it a little bit. Tight end Payne Durham was injured in yesterday's practice. He did not participate today. So Devin Culp is going to have to step up depending on how long Payne Durham is out for. And Thunderberg, he was right in the mix of all of these talented guys in the secondary that are fighting to make this spot. Tough break for him. We'll see how long he's out for. Todd Bowles didn't really divulge a ton of information about how long.
He just says day to day, and sometimes that means a week. Sometimes it means literally he might be back tomorrow. We saw Tyke Smith be an incredibly fast healer from his sprained ankle, and then you see other players
like Joe Tryanchenko still somewhat out. He puts on the helmet and shells or shoulder pads every single day, but
Servacio Dennis, another player. It looks like those two players, even though they put the pads on this week, didn't do the contact in practice, and probably won't play in this game on Saturday. It'll be interesting to see, and we'll talk about the offense here in just a minute or two. It'll be interesting to see if a player that returned to practice and actually had one of the most sensational catches that we've seen returns, and that's Cameron Johnson.
Yeah.
He had a tremendous catch today in practice where, this is
there. It is right there.
Actually, it's an acrobatic catch in the end zone for a touchdown. And he's got that jersey on. That means no contact. He's got some sore ribs, but I'd love to see this guy in a game because he is an electric, athletic wide receiver. And, again, sometimes I use comparisons and I get a little ahead of myself, but just from the makeup in terms of his size and his start-stop ability gives me some Antonio Brown vibes without the character concerns.
Yeah, we were talking about this while we were still at the Jaguars facility before we came back to record the show. And with all the talent that was on the field today, whether it's Mike Evans or Chris Godwin or, Brian Thomas, who we were talking about from the Jaguars, Cameron Johnson's still the fastest guy on the field. And it's the quick twitch. It's the ability to, just get a little bit of space and to be able to slip away from the defender and then just let that speed take on. And the footwork is truly what made Antonio Brown a great receiver until he went into the biofreezer or whatever and burned him off when he was with the Raiders. And luckily, Vontaze Burfict, I don't believe, is playing in the NFL anymore. So Cameron Johnson doesn't have to worry about the head injuries. Obviously, the rib injury may be something to pay attention to. But, man, if this guy can stay healthy and he can make an impact in the game on Saturday against the Jaguars, it's going to be really tough for the Bucs not to at least stash him on the 53-man roster so other teams can't pluck him off that practice squad and sign them to their roster, because he looks so special when he's out there working with a couple of different quarterbacks. He hasn't even really worked with Baker Mayfield. So imagine when he gets the chance to have some more reps with Baker Mayfield. I just think, and I've said this before, but I think it's important to repeat, he brings a different style of wide receiver than what Tampa Bay already has. Mike is already big, and you know what he can do. Same with Chris Godwin. Jalen McMillan, I'm not saying is a carbon copy of Mike or Chris, but he's got the size. He's got the athletic traits that you want in a bigger size wide receiver. Johnson being small, tiny.
Sudden. He's a very sudden guy, right? You've got a fast guy in Trey Palmer who continued to have some drops today, unfortunately. But this guy is sudden, and that's really the one type of trait that they don't have, right? Mike Evans has got some deep speed. He's got some size. Chris Godwin and Jalen McMillan are slippery. They're great route runners. They're fluid. Trey Palmer's got the deep speed, but this guy is sudden, the short area quickness, and I think that's what separates him. And you really want kind of a well-rounded receiving core, and he really does kind of check that box. We're talk more about the offense. The Bucs, I would say maybe the most disappointing thing from a defensive standpoint, we talked about the coverage, the lack of interceptions. This team had 22 interceptions heading into Jacksonville, and they got zero interceptions in 2 days here off of Trevor Lawrence, Mac Jones, CJ Beathard. So that to me has been one of the biggest disappointments. And we did see some interceptions that we'll talk about in just a minute here. On the offensive side for the Buccaneers, after not throwing a single pick yesterday, well, they came in bunches today. But let's get to this comment here from Johnny. Zion is what we need to worry about. I will say this. Zion McCollum had a bounce-back day today in the fact that I don't recall even seeing him, and that's a good thing.
Yes.
Sometimes you
don't want to see offensive linemen and cornerbacks,
yes,
essentially, unless the cornerback is taking the ball away.
Unless it's a pass breakup or it's an interception. But what it tells me is he wasn't targeted because the coverage was solid. And in some of those 7-on-7s, Matt, today they had a couple 7-on-7 periods. We saw a plethora of touchdowns from the Jaguars yesterday. Today, we actually saw what would have been coverage sacks, which is where the quarterback is holding the ball for 4 seconds and then just takes off and they blow the whistle because the coverage was so good. So the Tampa Bay secondary really did lock down in the red zone today, especially. There were a couple touchdowns. Evan Ingram did have one that was notable. We put that up on our
remember, they're repping it like 15 times in one session. So, like, if you went 0 for 15 in terms of scoring a touchdown in those red zone situations, then you have a huge issue,
no doubt,
on your offense. But, the secondary, while we did highlight some moments that we're struggling for, especially the back end at safety, Zion played a lot better. Even Jamel Dean, he got beat by Brian Thomas on one play specifically for about 20 yards. But Jamel Dean played a lot better, too.
He did.
When they play bad, we have to point it out, but they were much better today. Still looking to take the ball away, but again,
and you know what?
When they have a chance to blitz, I think it'll come.
The best thing is this practice didn't count, right?
Yeah,
doesn't count in the standings.
Bucs are still 0-0.
If you're gonna make mistakes, do it in practice. That's what these joint practices are for, right? You'd rather see them make the mistakes during the week than in the game on Saturday, but perhaps more importantly, get them out of the way in August, so that they're not there. You have these teachable moments, these learning lessons that you can build upon and grow and learn from. Folks, we really appreciate your support. We talked about getting to 15,000 subscribers on YouTube, and you guys have come through just in aces for us in that way. And if you want to take your support for Pewter Report to a new level, then we ask you to become a channel member. We're going to have a Pewter Report live chat tomorrow. Time to be determined. We'll post that on our Pewter Report Premium Members Only channel community board, and we'll talk about when that's going to occur. And you can also watch that replay if you can't join live. We'll do a Q&A. We'll give some inside scoop and some information about what to watch for in Saturday's game. And there's 4 different membership levels we have. We got the Pewter People member, the Pewter Pro member, the Pewter Premier member, and the Pewter Platinum member, all at different price points. So if you see a price point that fits your budget and your level of giving, we'd love to have you become a member as well. What the memberships do is, Matt, they help us with things like this. This is a trip where we're in Jacksonville for the better part of the week, and we're delivering the news live here on the scene. Pewter Report has more media members here, and myself and Adam Slavan, who'll be joining us in just a second, Matt Matera, our photographers, Jeff Jones, Cliff Welch, and we have more people up here from Pewter Report than any other media outlet in Tampa Bay covering the Buccaneers. So it's a great way to help us with things like travel expenses, to give news and information to you guys. And so greatly appreciate the support. Plus, there's some really cool perks like some of custom emojis and loyalty badges and things like that as well.
Yeah, and that's the benefit of, a higher membership, is that there's more perks and fun things that come with it. So, definitely encourage everybody. If you want some more Bucs information, please join us as a member if you can. By the way, shout out to John Spilotopoulos. I remember trying to
There
pronounce
you
your name
go,
before.
yeah.
John Castle Spilotopoulos. Thank you very much for being a member. That's cool. You got the 300 thing in the background as well. As John says, joining the membership is one of the best things I've done with my money. ... Just don't tell my wife. Go Bucs. Hey, your secret is safe with us, John. Thank you so much for being a member. And Jeff the Champ says, oh, he's doing the badges with Cody Mauk and Mike Evans and Yaya Diaby, Tampa Bay, and Let's effing bake. Yeah, guys, let me know, those who are members, which is your favorite emoji. I personally like the Yaya Diaby one, but there's really no wrong answers, which is fun.
Exactly. Just like there's no wrong Celsius too, Matt. We start our day every day with the Celsius energy drink.
That's right. Celsius, of course, is the official energy drink of PewterReport.com. It's helped us every morning go into joint training camp with the Buccaneers. There's so many great flavors of Celsius, whether it's the Galaxy Vibe, Cosmic, or Astro Vibe. I'm a big fan of the Arctic Vibe. I know Adam Slavon has had that as well. So if you need to know where to find a Celsius energy drink, head on over to the Celsius store locator on their website. Punch in your address, and it'll tell you the closest geographical location where you could pick one up. Might be a Walmart, health and fitness store, Piggly Wiggly, a Wallbound, to 7-Eleven, or your bodega.
Bodega.
And once you keep going to your bodega and you know you love Celsius and you want more and you want to buy it in bulk, you can buy it in bulk over on Amazon. Do the subscribe and save. I'd recommend purchasing the variety pack because variety is the spice of life, and there's so many great flavors of Celsius. So you can have it sent from Amazon to your place of residence whenever you want. Could be yearly, monthly, quarterly, whenever. You're in charge. You're the captain. Just make sure you're drinking Celsius energy drinks, the official energy drink of PewterReport.com. All right, Adam Slavon joining the show. Welcome, Adam. You were there with us at practice today. A lot going on. We did cover the defense a good amount, so I think we should turn our attention to the offense. No turnovers committed by or forced by the Bucs defense. However, Bucs quarterbacks 3 interceptions on the day, but I think there's kind of a little bit of an asterisk to a couple of them.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. So when you kind of look at the interceptions that the Buccaneers had today, the first one of which being Baker Mayfield, Andre Cisco, there was some Syracuse on Syracuse crime a little bit. He jumped a route on Sean Tucker and in the flat, ran it back for a pick 6. Kind of a case of the drops where Sean Tucker maybe should have held on to it or fought harder for the ball. Wouldn't place that one solely on Baker. Further in the camp, I would say the only one that's really at the fault of the quarterback was Kyle Trask. He had 2, but the first one kind of overthrew Keeft. Don't know if that was miscommunication or just an errant throw. Regardless, it wasn't a good look seeing him take away that ball. That was Eric Hallett the second.
Yes.
The second for good reason, because he came back. He had another interception on Kyle Trask. Later on.
Yeah, the ball was tipped in the air. Trask was looking for a receiver. Ball got tipped, popped up into the air, and he was just Johnny on the spot, running in stride, made the catch, and it would have been a pick 6 if it was a game. But really, just kind of unfortunate luck for Kyle Trask in that situation. I think you can kind of say the same about Baker Mayfield and his first throw. So 3 interceptions in total, but really, I think only one was truly where a quarterback was at fault with Kyle Trask. And to be honest, we don't totally know either, because we don't know. He was thrown to Keeft. Trask could have potentially thought Keeft was going to stop his route, but Keeft kept going, so it was a little behind him, a little high as well, so maybe he thought Keeft was going a bit longer. That's an answer we won't know, but just something to keep in mind for Bucs fans.
And that's a good point, because you mentioned kind of that miscommunication. You saw that on display a couple of times today. There was a couple routes ran where the quarterback and the receiver weren't really in sync on the Bucs side. But another one really stood out to me, Matt, and that was on the kickoff. Sean Tucker and Bucky Irving were both back there as returners, and Sean Tucker, he was under it on the right side. Bucky kind of waved him off, called him off, like kind of in the outfield in baseball.
Yeah, exactly.
But this one, Irving didn't catch. The ball fell to the ground, went a couple yards in the end zone before he was able to run it out. So for Thomas McGahee, as a special teams coach, he'll really have to reinforce kind of that communication. It's not just the offense. It's not just the defense. Special teams plays a big part in football games, especially with the new kickoff rule, adding some life, adding some energy right off the bat. They're going to need to iron those things out.
Yeah, that was something we were standing like right in front of that we saw, where it was like, oh my goodness, what's happening here? And initially it was like, wait, is that on Sean Tucker? But then as we kind of saw the way McGahee went over to Bucky Irving, apparently it was Bucky Irving's fault in that situation. But at least it happened in practice and not
a real game.
Certainly not a regular season game, but at least it didn't happen in the preseason game on Saturday as well. By the way, we got a new member. Shout out to Charles Fats.
Hey.
Thank you so much, Charles, for becoming a Pewter Report YouTube member who comments with now a member with a smiley face. Love seeing that, Charles. Thank you so much, and welcome to the Pewter Report membership. John, welcoming Charles as well, says, welcome, Charles. And Frank the Tank, the F train, LFB, let's effing bake, ladies and gentlemen. By the way, we got a $20 super chat as well from Richie P. Thank you
so much, Richie.
So much, Richie, for this $20 super chat. Apologize if I missed it real quick, but found it now. Richie P says, quick question and apologies if you already covered this, but in the last game, there was a moment when Bowles put his arm around Cohen and laughed. Any idea what he said to him? Appreciate the question. I actually don't recall what that conversation was about. Now, Todd Bowles and Liam Cohen don't have the longest of friendships. Like, they didn't really know each other up until, hiring him to become the offensive coordinator of the Bucs. That was kind of the same case with Todd Bowles and Dave Canales, but then this year is a little bit different with Todd Bowles and Liam Cohen. For all we know, Todd Bowles is a very sarcastic guy. He's good for a good laugh with those around him. It's potential that maybe he was just cracking a joke or saying something a little slick to Liam Cohen. Maybe there's something that he really wanted to specify to Liam Cohen. So I appreciate the question. Thank you so much for the $20 super chat. But no, I'm not exactly sure what conversation was had between Todd Bowles and Liam Cohen. They are around each other a lot. So
yeah, and I will say one observation that we've kind of noticed is Bowles. He said today at his presser, he's watched a lot of the offense. I mean, as a head coach, you know him as a defensive mastermind, but he's really spent the past couple of days really observing that Liam Cohen offense. And have to say, the results so far, based on the first preseason game, they've looked to be fruitful. Liam Cohen kind of bringing a modernized look to the offense. And Todd Bowles, he just wanted to spectate. I don't know what he said to him, but I'm sure it might have been one of those trademark one-liners.
Yeah, of course. He has a lot of those good ones. Let's stick with Baker Mayfield a little bit, and then we can kind of talk about what else happened on offense today. I thought Baker. Now I was kind of bouncing between the offense and defense. You were a little more focused on the offense today, specifically. But I remember watching Baker yesterday, and there was a lot of inconsistencies with his throws. Now today, I'm not sure how much he cleaned it up. Would you say he cleaned it up more? Was it around the same?
Cleaned it up a little bit.
Okay.
There were some throws, and he spoke about the communication with Mike Evans. I say he was more on the same page with his wide receivers.
Right. That's kind of the point I wanted to get to, is because Mike Evans, while didn't have as many targets in the end zone today, there was a session of practice where it was 11 on 11. It was good on good, essentially, with Baker and the rest of the starters. And there was just several plays where Baker didn't even have to be looking his way. He knew Mike Evans was going to be open and threw it to Mike and hit him in stride. And, the Bucs didn't necessarily during either training camp practice have the real, down the field shot. There was one, which we will talk about soon enough. But there wasn't a crazy amount of down the field shots, but the Bucs were manhandling the 10 to 15 to 20-yard routes. And that's what Mike Evans was running. Teams that decide not to double team Mike Evans this season, I do not know what they are doing, because it was literally pitch and catch between Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans today. Baker would be looking to his left and then just turn to his right, and there's Mike. And then it'd be vice versa. He'd be looking the other way and just hit Mike Evans. They are greatly in sync right now. And it's really nice to see, given some of the struggles that the offense maybe has had over the last two joint training camp practices or the preseason game, not, lighting it up on the scoreboard by any means, but granted, that's all the backups and not Baker Mayfield. One thing we know going into the regular season is that Mike Evans and Baker Mayfield are more than fine.
Yeah, I would definitely say so. And when you mentioned there wasn't a lot of deep shots, but a lot of those intermediate 15 to 20 yard connections. it's kind of like a foreshadowing of Liam Cohen's offense to where the running backs, they get 5-6 yards a pop, kind of opens up the middle of the field where Baker can kind of open things up a little bit. You kind of saw that in the first preseason game of Kyle Trask. There was a ton of receivers making these 16, 18, 20-yard catches. And that's really what the offense needs to be based around. Not those deep plays. The deep plays will come. Last year, you kind of saw Dave Canales mentioning the heavyweight match, and sometimes you throw that blow. It kind of seems to be similar this year in that aspect, but a lot of success intermediate. And Mike Evans, just bringing him up, talking about his ability to separate. I don't think that's something that's going to go away with age, Matt. His size and his frame, the way he's savvy with his routes. I mean, Baker Mayfield, he's mentioned it in the past. It just allows him to get open so easy.
By the way, shout out to Realtor David Zussman, who says Mike Evans emoji, and then another 1,000-yard season. I definitely think that's coming, and I think you make a fantastic point, Adam, that Mike Evans can play at an older age when other wide receivers can't, because he's fast, and to a degree you have to have a good amount of speed even when you do get older. But he's never been the fastest wide receiver. He's an excellent route runner, and he knows how to create separation. He uses his length, which sometimes, occasionally, it gets him into trouble. But overall, it's an advantage for him, and that will help him as he gets older and as he continues. So, yeah, it was good to see Baker and Mike just balling out. Like, it kind of was. We were kind of talking about Sean Tucker wearing breakaway pants and just kind of shooting hoops. That's what it felt like with Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans specifically. Is there anything else on the offense that you want to discuss? Because I want to get into the run game, but that can wait a little bit if there's anything else in particular.
There's one other notable play that you and we saw up close.
Thank you.
Right in front of us, and that was Kyle Trask connecting with Trey Palmer. You might have forgot about Trey, but not on this one. Past couple days, he's kind of struggled with some drops. On this route in particular, though, he beat two Jaguars defensive backs about 40, 50 yards down the field. Kyle Trask, he launched a beautiful deep ball, found Trey Palmer, like right by the end zone. Don't know if he would have got in or if it would have been one of those cases.
A
yard or two out.
I thought he had crossed the goal line by the time that he came down with the ball. And kind of sat down. But yeah, it was a great play. Tampa Bay Trey Palmer, who has had his struggles, had some drops yesterday, didn't have some great moments today, but really made up for it with the deep ball. It was the play of the day. Now, Todd Bowles wasn't too happy after. I asked him about it. What'd you think of the play? And he said, and I'm not quoting it verbatim, it was something like, it would have been better if it wasn't a sack on the play. So from Bowles' vantage point, which is much closer than us, apparently Kyle Trask got sacked. We were looking from 60 yards away, so we can't exactly see every single thing. But it was about a 40 to 50-yard pass. Trey Palmer just using his speed, getting down the field. He beat Montaric Brown and Darnell Savage on the deep ball, the corner and the safety. And then Palmer, we saw him have a big time play during the night practice, or at least when they were indoor. Yeah. And Palmer's doing this thing now where he just chucks the ball into the air, as high really as he possibly can. So it seems like he's got a new celebration for this year.
He does, but I wonder if he's doing it now, because if he does it in a regular season game, is that unsportsmanlike conduct? If you take that ball and you're launching it 20 yards in the air, I mean, I don't know. It teeters that line, but otherwise, it was a big play and probably the play of the day.
Oh, it was for the Buccaneers. Yeah, no question about it. It was the biggest play because, again, they weren't really throwing it that far down the field. Now, I do think between the Bucs offense and the defense, I really do believe they're not, and again, it's preseason, you're not going to show that much. They are being as vanilla as they possibly can. Defensively, they really haven't blitzed that much. No. We know that's the bread and butter of a Todd Bowles defense. They love to blitz. They do it all the time. We really did not see that too much at all. And when they did, they were getting home, just like the blitz and sack by Antoine Winfield Jr. during yesterday's practice. Today, more or less the same. But offensively, we're seeing the motion and things from Liam Cohen. But the Jaguars had more of the deep ball plays. And is that the Jaguars kind of throwing a little bit more out there? Maybe potentially. But I think the Bucs are really kind of saving all the spice, all the zest that they're going to have in this offense for week 1 against the Washington Commanders. Adam, I want to get your thoughts. I know we mentioned Kyle Trask got sacked.
Yeah.
Outside of that, though, the pass protection from the offensive line, I think, has been stellar over the last 2 days.
I would agree. And not just the offensive line. I think the Bucs trenches have really impressed as a whole, because you look at the run defense, as Scott mentioned before, they were stifling. The offensive line, though, when it comes to pass protection, I mean, Graham Barton's looked really good. You have Luke Gedeke and Tristan Wirfs on both sides. They were really handling the pass rushers. There was this one in particular where the Jaguars edge rusher, he was diving into the left, but trusty Tristan Wirfs, he's there to protect Tristan. He's there to protect Baker Mayfield, and he was able to read it, use his right hand, shove him away. And as a whole, the offensive line, whether it's the tackles or the interior, they really impressed.
They absolutely did. And then even guys like Elijah Klein, you were noticing.
Yeah.
What'd you see from him?
So Klein, it was really interesting with him. He was actually the left guard. It was like the third team.
Yeah.
But Klein, he graded out really well in his preseason opener, and he's done really well in terms of training camp practices, acclimating to the offense. The question with him as a 6th-round pick coming in the NFL was how quickly he could really hit the ground running, or if it would take time for him to develop. But whether it's practice or the preseason opener, he's looked really smooth, and it'll be interesting to see if he maybe climbs that depth chart a little bit.
Yeah, Klein I've liked from the beginning. I think he's come along as a pass protector better than I really expected, because that was kind of like the issue with him. Still has some work to do. I think the screen game, there's a lot to pick up, because obviously offensive linemen are kind of asked to head down the field, and
his bigger frame.
Yes, and it's a little bit of an acting thing too, because you want to kind of fake out the defender as if you are trying to block them and they got the better of them on a specific play. So, he's obviously not fantastic yet by any means. There's still a long way to go, but he's got the running game down, which we kind of expected.
Yeah.
The pass blocking has come better than we really would have imagined at this point of the season. So, he's not going to be the day one starter. That's what Ben Bredesen is here for. I know some people have talked about that Klein might not be a starter in his career, but he's a solid backup to have. I mean, it's very difficult to find depth on the offensive line, because if you're good enough to at least be a backup, that means there's another team out there that's like trying to take you and put them on their roster. But the Bucs kind of have really good depth, at least on the interior now with Robert. If Graham Barton wins the starting job, Robert Hainsey is a premium backup interior
one of the
offensive
best backup
lineman.
Centers in football.
Yeah, and the Bucs right now have been kind of swapping Robert Hainsey and Graham Barton. One of them will start with the starters, and then the next time the starters come around, it'll be the other center in there. So something to pay attention to, because like last year, granted, it was very different. You had Baker versus Kyle Trask, and while you want to see the competition go for as long as it can and get as many looks as you can, at some point you need to turn the page and be like, all right, we got to get our starter ready for the regular season. And it was right around this time when the Bucs were playing the Jets last year in the preseason, and Todd Bowles didn't announce a starter, and then we all get back to Tampa, and he did announce, that Baker Mayfield was going to be the starter. This time around, still very important with the center position and who's going to be that guy. But I'm curious if after Jacksonville, we start seeing one of them, hopefully Graham Barton. And that's nothing against Robert Hainsey, but obviously, Graham Barton's the future of this Buccaneers team. That's why they drafted him in the first round. Curious to see if they'll give Barton more of the first team snaps after Jacksonville and just let him go and run and be that guy at starting center. And speaking of the run game, the last thing I want to say about the offense is running the football. Yesterday, they were kind of stifled a lot, plenty of like 1 to 2 yard rushes, not really getting out of the gates, besides a nice run by Bucky Irving, and Sean Tucker did as well. Today, we saw a lot more of Rashad White, and it wasn't outrageously fantastic or amazing watching the Bucs run game today. But when it was 1 to 2 yards yesterday, today it was more like 4 to 5 yards. And yes, it's only a couple of yards difference, but hey, 2 5-yard runs, and that's a first down compared to what they were doing. So curious to see how they fare in the preseason game.
Yeah, and you'll definitely take that efficiency, right? The 4 to 5 yard runs. One run in particular Sean Tucker had. He did have a fumble that he recovered at one point. But one run stuck out to me. That was when he really bursted through the left side and kind of ran down the left sideline. I think he probably would have had a first down on that run. So you kind of saw the run game be more efficient today. And after being so efficient against the Bengals, I mean, the Jaguars, they have a good defensive front starting wise, but having to go against backups, definitely could see the Buccaneers finding more success on the run game this week.
No question about it. And speaking of Rachaad White, who I just mentioned ago, he's one of the guys that you may just see on the Buccaneers cruise coming up in March.
We're on the Bucs cruise. Of course we're playing pool volleyball.
Hey, we on the Bucs cruise, of course. Anytime I say Tampa, they will say Bay. Tampa! Hey! Tampa! Hey! Tampa! Hey!
We're on the Bucs cruise. Of course, I've got my Super Bowl 37 hardware. What do you think?
We're on the Bucs cruise, and of course we had a pirate night. Arr! Arr!
That's right, folks. Check out the Tampa Bay Buccaneers cruise. Join the fun with hundreds of Bucs fans on the 3rd annual Tampa Bay Bucs cruise, which sets sail March 7th through the 10th in 2025 on the beautiful Celebrity Silhouette ship. It's a 3-night cruise that begins in Fort Lauderdale and visits Key West and Bimini in the Bahamas. There's been some new announcements. Yaya Diaby officially is returning for the Buccaneers cruise. Mike Allstott, the A-Train, is coming as well. So some big-time names. Rachaad White, who I just mentioned as well. Luke Gedeke, Cade Otton, Christian Izien, Jordan Whitehead is going. Greg Gaines was on it last year. Don't make a scene. Jamel Dean was on it last year. So a lot of people expected to come back this year as well. Like I mentioned, Mike Allstott, Yaya Diaby are confirmed in. Same with Jordan Whitehead. Of course, there's also going to be Super Bowl MVP Dexter Jackson, Hall of Famer Warren Sapp, Gene Deckerhoff. Even more players are expected than the year before, and there's going to be a special guest appearance by Derek Brooks. There's going to be photo and autograph opportunities with players, a Raise the Flags sail away party, VIP parties with the players, special interviews, a water volleyball challenge, Bucs trivia contests, and much more. So reserve your cabin now on the 2025 Tampa Bay Bucs cruise, where drinks, including alcohol and Wi-Fi and tips, are all included with a $200 deposit per person. So Tampa Bay Bucs cruise, get in on it now, ASAP, as the rooms are filling up. Go to TampaBayBucsCruise.com if you want to reserve your room. That's TampaBayBucsCruise.com, or give them a call at 1-800-975-7112. That's 1-800-975-7112. As we wrap up the show with these joint training camp practices, we're going to talk about one or two last things about the defense, Adam. Let's start with Tyke Smith, who seemed like the only guy that could kind of hang with Brian Thomas a little bit, was able to get an incompletion on a pass thrown to Thomas in the end zone. Now, Thomas did have a little bit of a step on him, but because Tyke Smith was so close, he was able to kind of alter the path of the pass that was thrown in the first place. But, you know, we've heard Todd Bowles talk about how he's got a high football IQ and he looks like a veteran.
Yeah.
He is very much playing the part, too.
He definitely is. And now there's two sides of the coin with Tyke Smith, because he had one really good play on Brian Thomas, but Brian Thomas also got the better of him on another play earlier in practice. Talking about the good, though, Tyke Smith had a really nice pass breakup in the end zone, in the right corner of the end zone, on Brian Thomas, who he had 4 touchdowns yesterday, and he had another one today. Coming from Tyke Smith, kind of burned him on a deep route and really got the better of him. But with Smith, though, he really looks a part of being that starting nickel back. And Todd Bowles has spoken highly of him. Antoine Winfield Jr. yesterday, he mentioned that he already looks like a true professional out there. And when you have Antoine Winfield Jr., an all-pro and defensive captain, saying these positive things about Smith, you know that he's going to hit the ground running, and there's going to be some growing pains, but overall he's looked really solid. And it isn't just Antoine Winfield Jr. talking highly about him. Tavier Thomas last week, he spoke about how his experience at Georgia has really helped him in the aspect of you've already played against the best, you know what it's like to play against the best, and now he's doing that and had a really nice play today.
Yes, he did. So excited to see his continued growth. He hasn't had an interception just yet. He's had a couple of nice pass breakups, whether in Tampa or now in Jacksonville, but the interception is the one that's going to come next.
Yeah.
Hopefully. And typically they say turnovers come in bunches, and
They do.
You're usually talking about an entire defense. I think that's going to be the case specifically for Tyke Smith. He's not a guy that's just going to have one turnover. It's not just going to be one interception. It's going to be several, or an interception and a forced fumble, or making some type of play that results in a touchdown for the Bucs defense and the Bucs team as a whole. So I think the Bucs got a great one in Tyke Smith. I've been really impressed with what I've seen so far. And the other guy also in the same draft class as Tyke Smith, taken a little bit before him, Todd Bowles, not drafted by the Bucs, but Todd Bowles had a lot of great things to say about Chris Braswell too, who is supposed to make a splash for the Bucs at outside linebacker, and they may need him.
Yeah. So Todd Bowles, when asked about Chris Braswell today, he gave actually a really good quote. He said that Braswell's been excellent. He's been improving by leaps and bounds, and he's been one of the more pleasant surprises this week in Jacksonville. Yesterday, he had a couple of sacks and looked really good. And today he kind of continued that trend, and he's taken some positive steps forward. In Bowles' eyes, that's really encouraging to see. And it looks like he's kind of on that inside track to work into that rotation of outside linebackers and potentially be a starter, maybe not right away, but definitely as the regular season progresses.
Yeah, ultimately it will be a decision for Todd Bowles and what he decides to do with that outside linebacker room, because he's juggling a couple of things right now. Obviously, Yaya Diaby, we are patiently awaiting his return for the start of the regular season. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, still not technically back yet. He's out there in uniform each day, but until he can actually do some physical workouts, hitting either pads or hitting other players, you can't really count on him to have an impact on this team just yet. Anthony Nelson kind of is what he is right now.
Yeah.
So they're kind of in this, not no man's land, but they're in this interesting spot with Braswell and obviously Marquise Watts and Jose Ramirez, who we've talked about a lot. So I don't think we need to really repeat ourselves, but there's a lot of interesting stuff to really pay attention to for the preseason game that is coming up on Saturday. By the way, PewterReport.com will be in the building for that
In the
game.
house.
We will be in Jacksonville for Bucs versus Jags on Saturday. A lot of good things to pay attention to that we will write about, that we will talk about, and discuss a lot of great things. So if you're not already doing so, please follow us on all of our social media platforms on X, Facebook, and Instagram. We are at Pewter Report. Our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV. Please like and subscribe to the podcast. We got a lot of content out, a live look from yesterday's practice and today's practice. Scott's has various Pewter Pulses. We do the podcast all the time, and we always put up tons and tons of content on our YouTube channel, including the special Q&A with Pewter Report team members and people that have joined Pewter Report's TV subscribers. So if you want to help support PewterReport.com, you can do that and get access to those special exclusive videos by becoming a Pewter Report member. So that's just a heads up for everybody. We will have a podcast on Saturday after the game, after we talk to Todd Bowles and the quarterbacks. We will be live from Jacksonville recapping everything that happened from the game on Saturday night. So that's going to do it for us on today's show. For Scott Reynolds, for Adam Slavon, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everybody for watching, and we will see you Saturday night for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.